There are 6 parts to any veggie bean soup recipe. And the first is broth, and next is beans, and then mirepoix, and any other vegetables you want to add, spices, and toppings. So let's just go in order. So starting with the broth, I recommend that you make your own, and it's super simple. Just take about a quart of vegetable scraps, and this could be things that you save up during the week, or it could be if you have a juicer and your pulp is still very moist coming out, then you can use that. And just add anywhere from about 3 to 6 quarts of water and cook it for a few hours, and then after it cools, strain it off. And that's pretty much it. You can also add kombu, K-O-M-B-U, which is a sea vegetable, and that gives it extra minerals. But if you don't have that, don't worry about it. And worst case scenario, if you don't have broth on hand, then just use water. And if you are not vegetarian and you want to make bone broth, that's totally fine as well. You can throw bones in there. Okay, so the next is the beans. And so actually legumes would be more accurate. So I've got split peas, black beans, red lentils, pinto beans, chickpeas, and the regular brown lentils. And with each one, I think of different recipes. For example, the black beans is generally for more of a Mexican type of dish for me. If you want to make more of an Indian flavored dish, like the dal that you get at an Indian restaurant, or if you want to make minestrone soup, I would normally use either chickpeas or white northern beans. There's also a recipe there for the Moroccan chickpea stew. So if you want something a little out of the ordinary, perhaps for your palate, you might try that. What I usually do is just soak them the night before and then drain the rinse water, and then the next day I throw it in the crock pot. And by the end of the day, the beans are ready, and so I can go ahead and make my soup then. I just use the same dish to soak them and to cook them. I just rinse them in between, and that seems to make it just so much easier because it's one pot and it reminds me to cook them. And you can make larger quantities and store them, freeze them for later. I usually like to make enough for a week, and that encourages me to use them that week. So you can do it whichever way you want. Of course, you can buy canned beans, but I find that if you have these bulk beans on hand, that I'm more likely to make them, because a lot of times I'll reach in the cupboard and there's no canned beans. So this gives you a lot more options. So I'd recommend doing that. If you go for canned, go for the no BPA cans. But also, I mean, there's still some question about other chemicals that they're using in canned beans that are suspect. So canned beans are fine, but I'd also encourage you to try making your own for this challenge. So the next is, in classical cooking, what they would call mirepoix. In the French classical cooking, I should say, they use carrots, celery, and onion, and the ratio is 2 parts onion to 1 part carrot, 1 part celery. But in other cultures, they swap these out, and they might use celery root or peppers or garlic. The idea with mirepoix is that you just want to dice the vegetables very finely. You don't want to brown them, you just want to cook them slowly to sweeten them. So you can use butter or oil, or you can use just water or broth. So again, you don't want to brown them or caramelize, you just want it to be sweetened by a very slow cooking for this first little group of finely diced vegetables. The next vegetables that you're going to throw in on these, you can really, my mom used to make the clean the refrigerator soup. And really, you can just use whatever you have on hand. The only thing that you have to be mindful of is the timing. So these vegetables that are going to cook more slowly, like a sweet potato, that's going to take a while. So you just want to add that sooner. And then maybe some onion or chopped cabbage, something like that, is going to take less time than a sweet potato. But even less time, something like zucchini or yellow squash is only going to take a few minutes. And again, you know, it doesn't have to be like perfect. If it's something that's ready to go bad, then it's fine to use it in your soup, as long as, you know, you check it out and think it's still gonna taste okay. And then there's things like spinach or kale, so your greens. So for example, if you're making a kale bean soup, you just want to throw the kale in at the very end and just cook it long enough to be tender. But if you cook it too long, it's going to lose its bright green color. So with your greens that you want in your soup, cook those at the very end. And then as far as your spices, you can really get a long way with just salt and pepper. And I would recommend using sea salt rather than table salt. And you know, so salt and pepper will get you a long ways, but if you want to go for certain flavorings, then just use that. For example, if I was doing a black bean soup, I would use chili powder and black beans. If I was doing a dal for Indian flavors, I would probably use curry powder with the lentils. So, you know, just change it up. If I was making minestrone, I would use more of an Italian seasoning for that. So mess around with it and try and see what works for you. And the last thing is, so once you already you have your everything's together, you've got your broth and your beans and your mirepoix and your other veggies and your spices, then when you serve your soup, I recommend that you have something kind of fresh for your toppings. So you can put some diced parsley, or again, the parsley I would use if I was doing the minestrone soup. The cilantro I would use if I was doing the Mexican soup. You can also do something like a sprinkle of something like sunflower seeds or roasted pumpkin seeds, something like that, to give it a little bit of color and crunch. And the other good things that are nice to put on as topping are chives. So the tops of chives are a really nice soup topping. So chop those finely, or if you want more of a crunch, then you could use bean sprouts, or if you want something a little more tender, alfalfa sprouts. And those are the 6 components of your veggie bean soup: broth, beans, mirepoix, other vegetables, spices, and toppings. So I hope you will review the guidebook and jump in there, try some of your old favorites, but also try something new and let us know how it goes.